The bank manager's face drained of all color. Her hands trembled so violently she dropped her pen as she reached for the silent alarm. "Lock the main doors," she whispered to the security guard, "and get legal on the line. Now." She looked at me like I had just placed a severed hand on her glass desk instead of my late father's battered gardening journal. The same journal my stepmother had tossed into the dumpster behind the house just yesterday, calling it senile scribbles that belonged in the trash. She was so sure it meant nothing. Turns out some secrets refuse to stay buried, and some of them have teeth. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Elena Russo. I'm 29 years old, and until that rainy Tuesday morning, I thought the most stressful part of my week would be explaining to my boss why the quarterly reports were late. I work as a supply chain coordinator in Chicago. It's not glamorous, the pay is mediocre. My apartment is a fourth-floor walk-up with a radiator that clanks like a dying engine. But I'm good at my job because I notice details. I track missing shipments. I don't let go until I find where things went. My family has always called this being difficult. The funeral was on a Friday. My father, Leo Russo, had passed away at 82. He lived in a sprawling, drafty Victorian house in the suburbs, the kind with creaky floorboards and a garden that used to be the envy of the neighborhood. Everyone assumed he died broke, just a confused old man in a decaying house, living off a meager pension. That's certainly what my stepmother Victoria wanted everyone to believe. The service was small, efficient, and cold. Classic Victoria. She has always believed that public displays of emotion are vulgar. 20 minutes for the ceremony, 40 minutes for the reception, and then everyone leaves. No lingering, no stories, no mess. The catering consisted of dry crackers and cheese cubes that looked like they were sweating. My father, an Italian immigrant who believed food was a love language, would have haunted the place just to complain about the lack of sauce. My half-brother Julian showed up 30 minutes late in a Tesla he definitely couldn't afford. He said traffic was a nightmare. We were in the suburbs on a Friday morning. The roads were empty. But sure, Julian. Traffic. He barely looked sad. Then again, Julian has never been good at emotions that don't involve his own comfort. He hugged his mother, shook a few hands, and spent the reception checking sports betting odds on his phone. I stood in the corner nursing a lukewarm soda, watching my family perform grief like bad actors in a soap opera, and I thought about my dad. Leo Russo was a structural engineer for 40 years. He understood load-bearing walls. He knew exactly how much pressure a beam could take before it snapped. He was also a gardener. He taught me to plant tomatoes when I was 6, kneeling in the dirt, his big hands covering mine. He used to say that gardening wasn't about the harvest. It was about preparation. "You prepare the soil, Elena," he'd say. "You dig deep. You remove the rocks. If you don't do the work underneath, nothing grows above." 2 weeks before he died, I visited him at the house. He was frail, his skin like paper, but his eyes were lucid, burning with a sudden intensity. He grabbed my arm when Victoria left the room to take a call. "The planting journal," he whispered. "In the tool shed, the blue pot. Only you, Elena. Promise me." I promised. I didn't know what he meant, but I promised. After the funeral, the family gathered at the house. Victoria was already walking through the rooms with a real estate agent, talking about staging and curb appeal, calculating asking prices while the dirt on my father's grave was still loose. Julian followed them, talking about how he could invest his share in a tech startup. They had clearly discussed this before Dad took his last breath. I slipped out the back door to the garden. It was overgrown, neglected. Weeds choked the rose bushes. I went to the tool shed. It smelled of gasoline and damp earth. I found the blue clay pot immediately. It was cracked, sitting on a high shelf. Inside, wrapped in a plastic bag to protect it from moisture, was an old leather-bound notebook. It looked like a standard gardening journal. I opened it. It was filled with Dad's handwriting, notes on soil pH, rainfall charts, planting dates for zucchini and basil. I brought it back into the kitchen, intending to show Julian. Look, I wanted to say. Dad saved his notes for me. That was my mistake. Victoria saw it before I could speak. Her reaction was feral. She crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, snatched the book from my hands, and marched to the back door. Garbage, she spat. Just his ramblings. He was writing nonsense those last few years. Lists of vegetables that don't exist. Dates that don't make sense. It's trash, Elena. Stop digging through his junk. She opened the back door and tossed it into the large renovation dumpster sitting in the driveway. It landed with a dull thud amidst drywall scraps and old shingles. Leave it, she commanded. We need to clear this place out by Monday. Julian laughed from the table. Let it go, Lena. You're always holding on to garbage. They exchanged a look. Brief, sharp, but I saw it. I've spent 7 years tracking missing inventory. I know what it looks like when someone is trying to hide a paper trail. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, replaying Victoria's reaction. If the journal was just ramblings, why the aggression? Why not just roll her eyes and let me keep it? Why did she need it in the dumpster immediately? And Dad's words, only you, Elena. Leo Russo was an engineer. He didn't build things without a blueprint. He didn't hide journals in potting sheds and whisper instructions unless the structural integrity of his world depended on it. At 4:30 a.m., I made a decision. I was going back to the house. That journal was still in the dumpster, and I was going to find out why Victoria was terrified of it. The drive took an hour in the pre-dawn darkness. I parked 2 blocks away so they wouldn't see my car. The neighborhood was silent. I crept up the driveway, feeling ridiculous. I'm a supply chain manager, a professional woman, and here I was, climbing into a dumpster at dawn like a raccoon. The journal was buried under a bag of insulation. I dug it out, wiped the drywall dust from the cover, and sat in my car to examine it properly. At first glance, it was just gardening notes. March 12th, pruned the hydrangeas. April 4, planted peppers. But then I noticed the pattern. The dates. They didn't align with planting seasons. Who plants tomatoes in November in Chicago? I flipped to the back. Tucked inside the rear cover, glued seamlessly so you'd miss it if you weren't looking for structural flaws, was a thin envelope. Inside was a single index card in Dad's blocky engineer script. Account 99420L First City Trust. They think it's gone. Ask for the Foundation archive. Trust no one, only you, Elena. I read it until the words blurred. They think it's gone, meaning Victoria, meaning Julian. Dad had hidden something, and he'd built a failsafe. I took photos of every page. I scanned the index card with my phone. I uploaded it all to a secure server. In logistics, if it's not backed up, it doesn't exist. I drove home with the journal in my purse, my heart hammering a rhythm against my ribs. The first text came at 9 a.m. Victoria. Hope you got home safe. Just a reminder, the house is off limits until the estate sale. We changed the locks this morning. Don't come by without calling. She changed the locks. At 9 a.m. on a Saturday, she was locking it down. The second text came at noon. Julian. Hey, sis. Mom says you were acting weird yesterday. Just chill, okay? We're gonna sell the house, split the money 3 ways. Everyone wins. Don't make this complicated. 3 ways? Since when did Victoria ever share anything? She'd spent 20 years spending my father's money on renovations that never finished and vacations she took alone. They were coordinating. They were scared. I looked at the journal, at the index card. First City Trust was an old bank, mostly for commercial accounts. Monday morning, I called in sick. I put on my best suit, the one I wear for contract negotiations, and drove downtown. I walked into First City Trust at 9:15 a.m. The lobby was marble and silence. I approached a teller, placed the journal and the index card on the counter, along with my ID and the death certificate. I'm here to access the Foundation archive for Leo Russo, I said, keeping my voice steady. The teller, a young man named David, looked at the index card. He frowned. He typed something, stopped, typed again. His eyes went wide. "One moment, please." He didn't just walk away, he practically ran. 20 minutes passed. I sat in a velvet chair, sweating through my blouse. Had I walked into a trap? Was this nothing? Then a woman appeared. Tall, severe, wearing glasses that looked like they cost more than my car. She introduced herself as Evelyn Sterling, Senior Vice President of Private Wealth. "Ms. Russo," she said, "come with me." We went to an office on the top floor. View of the lake, mahogany everywhere. She closed the door and locked it. "May I see the journal?" she asked. I handed it over. She opened it. Not to the front, but to the middle. She pulled out a jeweler's loupe and examined a specific page of planting notes. She looked up. "Did you read the entries closely, Ms. Russo?" "They looked like vegetable lists," I said. "They are a cipher," she said. "Your father was a structural engineer. He liked codes." She turned the book around. "Tomatoes, 4 rows, 20 plants. That's a routing number. Peppers, 8 beds, 5 seeds. That's an authorization key." She sat back. "This account has been dormant since 2014. It is a high-yield trust. The current balance is," she checked her screen, $350,000. I stopped breathing. 3 million? My father clipped coupons. He drove a 2005 Ford Taurus. He complained when the price of milk went up. "There is more," Sterling said, her face grim. "In 2018, a woman attempted to access this trust, Victoria Russo. She presented a power of attorney document. She claimed your father was incapacitated. She tried to transfer the entire balance to an offshore account in the Caymans." "What happened?" I managed to whisper. "Your father had set up a dead man switch on the account," Sterling explained. "Any transfer over $50,000 required his physical biometric confirmation, a fingerprint scan at the bank. Victoria didn't know that. When she tried to bypass it, the system locked down. We notified Mr. Russo. He came in the next day." "He knew," I said. "He knew she tried to steal it." "He did more than know," Sterling said. "He built a case. He told us that if anything happened to him, we were to wait for you. Specifically, you. And if anyone else tried to access it," she tapped a key on her keyboard, "we were to notify the authorities." "Who?" "Everyone," she said. "The FBI, the IRS, the state attorney." She looked at me. "Ms. Russo, your father didn't just leave you money. He left you a weapon. This journal contains the encryption keys to a file he uploaded to our secure server years ago. It's a ledger of every dollar Victoria stole from his business accounts before he retired. Every forged check, every fake invoice." I stared at the battered book, the junk Victoria threw in the trash. "What do we do now?" I asked. Sterling picked up her phone. "We execute the plan." The police didn't come to the bank. They went to the house. I sat in Sterling's office as she coordinated with the detectives. It turns out, elder financial abuse combined with wire fraud and forgery makes the federal government very interested. The investigation unraveled everything in 48 hours. Victoria hadn't just tried to steal the trust. She had been siphoning money from Dad's pension for 5 years. She'd forged his signature on loan documents. She'd taken out a second mortgage on the house without him knowing. And Julian, my entrepreneur brother, he was the mule. The investigation showed transfers from Victoria's accounts directly to Julian's startup, which was really just a bank account he used to pay for online gambling debts and his Tesla lease. Dad knew it all. He watched them steal from him. But he was trapped. He was sick. He was tired. And he knew if he confronted them while he was alive, Victoria would make his final months a living hell. She controlled his medication, his food, his access to the phone. So he played the long game. He pretended to be the confused, senile old man they wanted him to be. He wrote his nonsense gardening journal right in front of them, and they laughed at him while he documented their crimes in code. He was an engineer. He knew that if you want a structure to collapse, you don't just kick the wall. You weaken the foundation and wait for gravity to do the rest. I received a call from the lead detective, a woman named Officer Miller, 3 days later. "We arrested your stepmother this morning," she said. "She was at the house trying to rip up floorboards. Apparently, she thought there was cash hidden in the walls." "And Julian?" "Picked him up at a casino in Indiana. He's singing like a canary. He's blaming everything on his mother." Of course he was. The sentencing took 6 months. I went to every hearing. I wore my best suits. I sat in the front row. Victoria looked smaller in the orange jumpsuit. Without her makeup, without her designer clothes, she looked like what she was: a bitter, greedy woman who had underestimated her husband. When the judge read the sentence, 8 years for Victoria, 3 for Julian, I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just felt a weight lift off my chest, a structural load finally removed. Dad's lawyer, an old friend named Mr. Henderson, called me to his office after the trial. "Leo left you one last letter," he said. "He wanted you to have it when the dust settled." He handed me a plain white envelope. I opened it in my car. "My dearest Elena, if you are reading this, the weeds have been pulled. I'm sorry I couldn't do it myself. I was too tired, and the roots were too deep. But I knew you could do it. You have always been the strong one. You don't just look at the surface, you dig." Victoria loved the lifestyle I gave her, but she never loved me. Julian loves only himself. But you loved the garden. You loved the work. The money and the trust is yours, all of it. Buy a house with good bones, plant a garden. But remember what I taught you. The most important work is the work nobody sees. Love, Dad. P.S. The tomatoes in the code, that was the date you were born, the best harvest of my life. I sat in my car and cried until I couldn't breathe. That was a year ago. I quit my job in supply chain. I bought a small farmhouse 2 hours outside the city. It needs work. The roof leaks and the floors creak, but the soil is rich. I started a business, a forensic accounting firm that specializes in elder fraud. I help families find the missing money, the hidden accounts, the secrets buried in the trash. I keep the gardening journal on my desk. It's a reminder. Victoria writes to me from prison. She sends letters asking for money for the commissary, claiming she made mistakes and that family should forgive. I don't reply. I just shred them. Julian calls sometimes. Collect. I blocked the number. I'm in the garden now. It's spring. I'm planting tomatoes. I prepare the soil. I dig deep. I remove the rocks. Because Dad was right. If you don't do the work underneath, nothing grows above. And I plan on growing something beautiful.